Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty end the week down nearly 1% despite a rally on Friday. 35 out of the 50 Nifty stocks post losses this week. Real estate and defense stocks buck the trend, gain over 2%. The Central Board of the Reserve Bank of India is expected to decide on the surplus transfer to the government today. A CNBC-TV18 poll shows economists expect at least a 3 lakh crore rupee bonanza for the government. The higher surplus is on account of large profits from the sale of dollars by the central bank. The CEO of Prosus and Naspers is betting big on food, fintech and e-commerce in India. Fabrizio Bloisi promises to invest billions and eyes at least 5 IPOs in the next 18 months despite setbacks in Byju's and Farm Easy. Also rules out any stake sale in Swiggy. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Pakistan denied permission to Indigo's Srinagar-bound flight from using its airspace to escape bad weather, says India's aviation regulator. The flight from Delhi suffered damage to the nose cone, leading to its grounding for further inspection. Passengers and crew escaped without injuries. The Trump administration revokes Harvard's authorization to enroll foreign students who currently account for 27% of the student population, says the university failed to create a safe campus environment, alleged that many anti-American pro-terrorist agitators on the campus are foreign students. The U.S. House of Representatives approves Trump's tax cut bill. This includes a 3.5% tax on remittances sent by non-U.S. citizens to other countries of origin. Nearly 3 million Indians work in the U.S. under various visa programs. The U.S. contributed nearly 28% of remittances for India in FY24. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu accuses leaders of UK, France and Canada of emboldening Hamas after they called for an end to the military offensive in Gaza. At least 29 people, including children, have died due to starvation in the last few days, according to health officials in Gaza. Well, straight to the market action of the day. We witnessed a major buying in trade today with the benchmark indices rising nearly 1%. 48 out of the 50 Nifty stocks closing in the green. FMCG and IT were amongst the top gainers. But for the week, the market closed in the red. But this is the story for today, up 1%. The markets this week down by about 0.5% for the Nifty, and similar story playing out for the Sensex. The Nifty Bank closing absolutely flat. Prashant is standing by now to wrap up the day's market action for us. Prashant, well, it's a flat close for the week. Of course, we saw a big move on Friday, but sum up the week that was, and more importantly, the triggers that we should watch out for in the week ahead.
Well, it looked like the week will turn out to be a down one, and maybe even pronounced, because if you looked at in the middle of the week, it looked that way. But the market recovered, and by Friday, it was actually a pretty decent week. So the Nifty was down only 0.7% after being up 4% the prior week. The Nifty Bank was actually unchanged, even slightly higher. And remember, the Nifty Bank also had a 5% week last one. Mid-cap index was down again 0.7% after being up 7% last week. And the small-cap index was actually up another 0.5% after last week's 9% gains. So I don't think there is any other way to sort of describe what happened, but to say that a bit of a dip early on, but was largely bought into, especially on Friday, and it turned out to be a pretty decent week. Nothing spectacular in terms of this or that sector. I'll just start with Nifty and what did well. So BEL, the defense pack, continued to shine, 5% for the week on BEL. HDFC Life was up 4%. Tata Steel was up about 3.5% or so. On the downside, Grasim lost 5, Maruti was down 4, and Mahindra & Mahindra was down about 4% as well. I looked at the universe of NSE 500, the top gainers and top losers through the course of this week, and Honasa came up with a 26% gain for this week. Emcure was up 21, Pfizer was up 17, Jubilant Pharma was up 14, and a name like BASF was up about 13% or so. So much more dispersed and not really from one sector. For example, if you go back and look at what last week was like, it was largely all defense. Now, on the downside, if you look at broader markets, DOMS, the stationery company, 11% cut. Dixon was down 10. Questcorp was down about 9%. SW Solar, Idea was down 8%. Of course, news flow there. Colgate, Credit Access, and some of these are numbers related as well. So, I mean, an unremarkable kind of a week, but not bad, given that you've actually, especially in the broader market, managed to eke out a little more gains after what was a pretty spectacular week, the last one. Monday, of course, is a US market holiday. That market will start trading on Tuesday. Focus very much in the US on bond markets. And on 3 days next week, I think Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, there are bond auctions cumulatively about $200 billion. And response to those bond auctions will be watched closely because there have been fears that maybe buyers are hesitating to put in bids, put in money. Will the government need to cut the size of these auctions? Will the Fed have to do something? Are we at that point? I think those are questions which matter a lot more for equities, but it's all coming from the bond side. Back to you.
Prashant, many thanks for joining us. Now, the Central Board of the Reserve Bank is expected to decide on the surplus transfer to the government today. Now, let's take you through a CNBC-TV18 poll of economists. They expect a 3 lakh crore rupee bonanza for the government. The higher surplus is on account of large profits from the sale of dollars by the central bank. Ritu's here with more details. Ritu, we've been getting used to this bonanza from the RBI, or the government's been getting used to this bonanza from the RBI for the last few years. What's the street working with? What's the best case scenario?
Well, Shireen, the broad range of this bumper dividend that the street is working with is about 2.5 to 3 trillion rupees as per most. But there are exceptions like Citi, for instance, which expects the surplus transfer to be anywhere between 3.5 all the way to 4 trillion rupees. Although, that seems a bit unlikely. Our poll had suggested a number of 3 trillion for FY25. Now, even at this, it will be a sharp jump from last year's dividend transfer, which was then at a record high at 2.1 trillion rupees. And it is also going to be much larger than the government's FY26 budgeted amount of 2.6 trillion, which is collectively from the RBI, public banks and financial institutions put together. The key reason that we're going to get such a huge number, of course, is going to be the dollar sales. Now, the gross dollar sales, in fact, rose very sharply to about $400 billion in FY25 compared to just $153 billion in FY24. And that's probably the highest since the global financial crisis as well. Now, keep in mind, when RBI sells dollars, it sells at current prices, which averaged about 84 to 85 rupees on average for the previous fiscal. And the purchase price is the average of all of its reserves, which economists expect at around 78 per dollar, which means for every dollar that RBI sold, it earned a profit of about 6.5 rupees. So considering the $4 billion dollars that have been sold, that is a straightaway gain of 2.5 trillion. And that is where the bulk of the dividend is likely to come for. Then there are other factors like interest income on rupee and foreign securities that will also support this. But what is the big unknown is how much RBI transfers to the contingency buffer, which is the ECF, Economic Capital Framework. The Bimal Jalan Committee had recommended that RBI keep 5.5 to 6.5% of its balance sheet as contingency risk buffer. Last time around, they had kept it at the upper end at 6.5%. But this time, we'll have to see what the number really comes out to be.
Yes, we will, and we are waiting for that. Ritu, many thanks for joining us. Now, net foreign direct investment into India crashed by more than 96% to just $353 million in FY25 compared to the previous year. This is due to large-scale repatriation of capital by overseas investors and increased foreign investments by Indian companies overseas. The central bank also said that the decline reflects positively on the economy, as it's a sign of a more mature market where foreign investors can enter and exit smoothly. The gross FDI remained elevated in FY25 with 14% growth year on year. The big earnings of the day are Ashok Leyland posting a healthy performance in Q4 along expected lines. Net profit up 38%, primarily driven by a tax credit of 170 crores. Revenues saw a spike of close to 6% as recent price hikes have boosted realization. The board approved a bonus issue of 1 share for every share held. It also approved a dividend of over 4 rupees a share. Metal giant JSW Steel posting a strong Q4. Net profit rose by over 13% on a yearly basis, meets street expectations. Revenues declined by 3%, but in line with what the street was forecasting. So that's JSW Steel for you. And it's also sent demand notices to banks requesting a refund of 19,300 crore rupees paid under its resolution plan for Bhushan Power and Steel. The company's also sought a 60-day delay in the liquidation proceedings. Banks have said that they will decide on the refund during this period and don't have to immediately refund the money to the company. This was part of the terms and agreement between the company and the lenders when the deal was signed. But the big newsmaker this evening, the global CEO of Prosus and Naspers, is betting big on food, fintech and e-commerce in India. Fabrizio Bloisi, the head of one of the largest tech investors in the world, is planning to invest billions and has promised at least 5 IPOs by companies backed by Prosus in India. The portfolio of Prosus spans across sectors, including companies like Swiggy, Rapido, Meesho, Urban Company, among others. Prosus is not keen on selling any stake in Swiggy, though, at the moment. Take a look.
Yeah. We have in total $18–19 billion in cash in Prosus.
Yeah.
Our intention is to invest to grow, and I think India is one of the 3 big priorities. So we will invest for sure a few billions here.
A few billions here, but your style of investing, when Prosus first started investing here, it was growth stage. Then in the last few years, we've seen early stage investments come up as well. Are you looking at, perhaps more larger deals, buyouts? Is that something you see an opportunity in the India market?
I think something that Prosus has is flexibility, and our strategy is to empower the local demands and the local entrepreneurs. We have 35 companies in India. Yeah. Having 5 IPO, it's not like this is the potential, this is the short-term potential. I think we will have more public companies from Prosus portfolio just after the next 10–12 months, the next 12–18 months. Well, so my point is, we are really confident that we have so many nice companies, we have many IPOs ahead, but I don't see IPOs as the end, like, we are IPOing so we can sell. No, we are trying to build a $50 billion business here in India. There is so much more to do. We have to invest much more. We have to enable consolidation in terms of ecosystem consolidations, how some of our companies can help the others. That's what I think we bring to the table.
So for the time being, do you intend to continue holding on to that 20+% stake that you have in Swiggy even after the IPO?
Yes, we are not in a mood of selling. We are in a mood of keep investing in India.
Okay.
So our intention is to keep investing and invest more, generally in India.
But no plans to, sell some of your stake from Swiggy yet?
No. PayU has a lot of growth ahead. We are doing well in credit also inside PayU. And just a quick story to inspire you. We invested in China 25 years ago.
Tencent?
Yes.
Yeah.
And for many years, people said, why don't you sell Tencent? They are valuing like $10, $20, $50 billion. People said, I was not there, but people made this question, like Tencent now is public, $10 billion, sell. And we haven't sold, and now Tencent is a $600 billion company. We are in India. India can be as exciting or better than China. We have so much ahead. We are just getting started. We have space to build $10 billion companies here. That's the obvious, but $50 billion, $100 billion here.
And you can get that full interview with the Prosus CEO at 6:30 p.m. tonight on a special edition of our show, Startup Street. US President Trump's tax cut bill has proposed a 3.5% tax on remittances sent by individuals who aren't citizens to their countries of origin. Now, the bill was passed by the US House of Representatives, and it refers to the tax as an excise tax. The final version of the legislation has reduced the controversial tax from the proposed 5% to 3.5%. Now, nearly 3 million Indians work in the US under various visa programs like the H-1B, etc. The US contributed nearly 28% of the remittances for India in FY24, which is money sent to India by Indian origin non-residents living in the US. Now, the Trump administration has revoked Harvard University's certificate to enroll international students. The university has just 72 hours to comply with 6 federal demands to regain its eligibility. The demands include giving the Trump administration access to all records of illegal activity by non-immigrant students in the past 5 years. If the university fails to comply, it means that thousands of current students must transfer to other schools or leave the country. This action comes after the government terminated the $2.7 million in grants for Harvard last month. Take a look.
U.S. President Donald Trump's administration on Thursday revoked Harvard University's ability to enroll international students and is forcing existing students from overseas to transfer to other schools or lose their legal status. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has ordered the university's Student and Exchange Visitor Program certification be terminated and accused Harvard of, quote, fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party. Harvard rejected the allegations, calling the move unlawful. The clampdown on foreign students marks a significant escalation of the Trump administration's campaign against the elite Ivy League university in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which has emerged as one of Trump's most prominent institutional targets. The move comes after Harvard refused to provide information that Noem had previously demanded about some foreign student visa holders who attend the university, the department said. In the 2024-2025 school year, Harvard enrolled nearly 6,800 international students, amounting to 27% of its total enrollment, according to university statistics. Trump, a Republican, has undertaken an extraordinary effort to revamp private colleges and schools across the U.S. that he says foster anti-American, Marxist, and radical left ideologies. He has criticized Harvard in particular for hiring prominent Democrats to teaching or leadership positions. Trump has frozen some $3 billion in federal grants to Harvard in recent weeks, leading the university to sue to restore the funding.
And staying with international news, over 50 Palestinians have been killed or are missing after an Israeli airstrike on a residential building in Gaza. Rescue operations have been stopped due to a lack of heavy machinery. Health officials at Gaza have said that at least 29 people, including children, have died due to starvation in the last few days. Officials have warned that thousands more are at a risk of dying as limited aid begins trickling into the enclave. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused the leaders of Britain, Canada and France of emboldening Hamas. This comes after the leaders threatened coordinated action if Israel did not stop its military offensive in Gaza. The Israeli Prime Minister also said that President Macron, Prime Minister Carney and Prime Minister Starmer were on the wrong side of justice. The suspect in the fatal shooting of 2 Israeli embassy employees in Washington has been charged in federal court with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The suspect, Elias Rodriguez, has been charged with murder of foreign officials and causing death with a firearm. Officials have said that more charges, including terrorism, could be added. From one war-torn region to another, U.S. President Trump has announced that there was a major prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine. Trump congratulated both sides on the negotiations. Meanwhile, G7 nations have vowed to impose more sanctions on Russia if it fails to make progress towards peace with Ukraine. We will head into a break, but up next, Pakistan denied permission to Indigo's Srinagar-bound flight from using its airspace. This after Indigo asked for a flight path deviation to escape from bad weather. That and more when we return. Well, the Supreme Court has issued a notice to the centre over a petition filed seeking to regulate betting apps. The top court has refused to pass an interim order and said it will issue notices to states if needed. Abhimanyu joins us now with more. Abhimanyu, take us through the Apex Court's observations in this matter.
Well, the court had observed that there is not much which the judiciary, which the courts can do in such a case. If people voluntarily are engaging in betting, be it online or offline, the PIL before the Apex Court had sought regulation on online as well as offline betting. The petitioner had claimed that several people, thousands of people across India had committed suicide, and he was intervening. He was filing a petition before the top court on behalf of the parents of the people who have committed suicide. He had also rued the fact that several celebrities were also endorsing many such activities, and he wanted the court to come down with clear-cut orders as far as clamping down or regulating the practice of online and offline betting is concerned. However, the court refused to pass any interim order. A notice has been issued, though, to the centre. The court has also made it clear that if need arises, it would issue notices to the states, but no interim order can be passed for now. Justice Suryakant also observed that principally he is with the petitioner, but there's nothing much which can be done by the court. So it remains to be seen whether there would be any judicial intervention even at a later date. And more importantly, the eyes would be, of course, on the affidavit which would be filed in due course by the central government, clarifying what is their position on the issue. And even if there is a malpractice or people are falling prey to betting or betting apps, what kind of action can be taken by the union government?
All right, Abhimanyu, many thanks for joining us. That's the latest as far as the betting app matter in courts. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the first Rising Northeast Investor Summit in New Delhi. In his address, the Prime Minister called the region India's new growth engine. The event saw major investment pledges from large conglomerates like Reliance, the Adani Group and Vedanta. Speaking at the summit, Reliance Chairman Mukesh Ambani pledged to double the group's investment in the region to 75,000 crore rupees in the next 5 years, added that the company will also help transform the region into a healthcare hub.
Reliance Foundation will bring the best of cancer care to the Northeast. To begin with, we have established a 150-bed comprehensive cancer hospital in Manipur. We are collaborating with Mizoram University on care of breast cancer using genomic data. In Guwahati, we have built an advanced molecular diagnostic and research lab. It will be among the largest genome sequencing capacities in India. We will help transform the Northeast into a healthcare hub and a research powerhouse.
Well, that's Mukesh Ambani. Now, SEBI Chief Tuin Kantapande said that the market regulator is not opposed to NSE's public listing. Speaking exclusively to CNBC Sri Jayagaraja, Pandey reiterated that all issues related to the NSE IPO will be ironed out soon. Take a look.
Is SEBI fundamentally opposed to an NSE listing?
Not at all.
What needs to change within the NSE for SEBI to approve a listing?
I think there are certain issues which are being discussed and flagged, and in my belief is that they're going to be resolved soon.
In your discussions with the NSE, are you getting any clarity then on whether leadership there is making the necessary changes that you have suggested? And just walk us through what needs to change, whether it's on the litigation side. I know that there are issues with the clearinghouse that you have flagged, which we will get on to later. But can you be a bit more specific, sir, on what needs to change at NSE to facilitate a listing ultimately?
I think all of the issues will be resolved. I think that much I can say, both on the governance, litigation, technology, all of it. It's possible to resolve. I think they're quite amenable to solutions.
Above all, is there any progress on the NSE clearing operating independently, which has been among SEBI's requests? And what progress or otherwise is being made on that front?
There has it's not been a definitive direction from SEBI. It was put out as a measure of public consultations in November 2024. Is a possible way whether we could do that, but there are different models in the world, and there is no one model which we can say is the only way we can work. So there are very much possible to resolve things and still move ahead.
Well, that's SEBI Chief Tuin Kantapande. Now, 2 days after a Srinagar-bound Indigo flight suffered damages to its nose cone due to a hailstorm, India's aviation regulator said Pakistan denied permission to the pilots to use its airspace. The pilots were attempting to escape bad weather, but their request was rejected by Pakistani authorities. Remember, the Pakistan airspace is closed to Indian airlines after Operation Sindoor. The passengers and the pilots managed to escape without injuries. Madiha is standing by to give us a timeline of what transpired that evening on that flight. Madiha.
Well, it was an extremely harrowing experience for these passengers on board Indigo's Delhi-Srinagar flight 6E2142. And why not? If the aircraft is being hit by ice balls from all over and is being descending at 8,500 feet per minute, we can only imagine the state of the crew as well as the passengers during those moments. The incident occurred on Wednesday, 21st May. It was all normal when the flight took off from Delhi at around 5 p.m. Problem started after a few minutes into the journey when the aircraft, cruising at 36,000 feet, entered hailstorm and severe turbulence near Pathankot. Now, according to what the pilots of the plane have told the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, that they requested the Indian Air Force for permission to deviate towards left, which is the international border. But IAF did not allow the flight to do that. Remember, Pakistan has closed its airspace for Indian carriers, and IAF's denial could be based on airspace restrictions to avoid any potential adverse action by Pakistan. The pilots then directly contacted Lahore ATC to enter into their airspace to avoid the weather, but they were not allowed to enter by ATC authorities in Lahore as well. The statement further states that the crew initially attempted to return to Delhi, but as they were close to the thunderstorm cloud, they decided to penetrate the weather, and subsequently the aircraft was in the middle middle of hailstorm and severe turbulence. With limited options to navigate in the mountain region, the crew chose to continue to fly through the weather by the shortest route towards Srinagar. The weather was extreme and the aircraft triggered several warnings. Angle of attack fault, alternate yaw protection lost, backup speed scale unreliable. These were the warnings triggered. Due to the upward and downward movement of the wind, the aircraft lost the autopilot control as the wind speed had steep variations. During this period, the aircraft descended at 8,500 feet per minute, much higher than the typical descending rate of 1,500 to 2,000 feet per minute. The crew flew the aircraft manually till they exited the hailstorm and landed safely at Srinagar airport. The flight landed at 6:30 p.m., making it the most terrifying 90 minutes for the crew as well as the passengers on board. The aviation regulator is conducting further investigation into the incident.
Madhya, many thanks for joining us. Yes, a terrifying 90 minutes indeed. That is what took place. That is what transpired there on that Indigo flight to Srinagar. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment with more.